no longer the employer being able to say, like, you're just lucky you have a job. I can't tell you how many millennials basically be like, I will quit tomorrow unless you make me happy. Like, that just didn't exist in the time of our grandparents or even our parents, really.
Totally. And if we were looking at these levels, our grandparents and parents would be at level 1, where they're trying to get their basic needs met, where we're now moving into other levels where we can have the flexibility to say no to jobs if it hurts our soul or if it bothers our integrity. I read an article years ago. I'm a big fan of the millennials. I'm the tail end of the Gen X. I do have a lot of millennial traits, but I am Gen X, and I think they're all cool in their own right. But I really love how this article I read depicted, and of course this wasn't a blanket statement. I don't know how they got their information, but I thought it rang true. A millennial would rather make $40,000 a year and be mostly happy than make $80,000 and be unsatisfied with their work.
Yeah.
That is huge. That is way stepping out of that level 1 of necessity and survival. That is claiming I feel and want, which is a big deal. And like you said, even if they do have a job that doesn't satiate all their creativity, they might have a side hustle or get their outlet somewhere else or have a hobby or something, and that is big. Very commonly, this is not a blanket statement, but it's something that I've noticed and even rubbed up against a bit, but very commonly in those 1950s and 60s projections of the stay-at-home mom, very commonly she wouldn't have very many friends or very many hobbies or a side thing or any real outlet of creativity. Maybe baking cookies, and for some that's fine and that satiates them, but I don't think it satiated them. I think it was kind of like an imagery or a facade, because you then get a big jump at martinis at noon and popping a couple pills, pharmaceuticals in the 50s. I think that's where they started testing ecstasy. And I don't know if that was a rumor in the 90s when I was running around the rave scene, but I heard that some of the beginning portions or pieces of MDMA or ecstasy started coming out in the 50s when they were testing it on housewives that were unhappy. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess some people can be satisfied with cooking and cleaning, but a lot can't. And you're seeing more and more who can't. Like you even said, Sarah, it's coming down from 2.5 to 2. Some people are just deciding not to have kids. And if they do, maybe 1, maybe 2. Certainly not the baby boom anymore. We can't really afford it. I'm not sure they could afford it back then either. Tasha, you got something to say there? We've been kind of hogging the mic here.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation in alignment with what my decision was today. You know, we're talking about value, and today I made the decision that my income source no longer aligns with me, and so I will no longer be receiving that, which is my only income source at this moment. And as soon as I decided that, I started thinking about all of these things that seem to be in my way with feeling fulfilled. And I've done a lot of tiny living, and like I have a camper van, and I've lived in RVs for a few years now. And I decided today that I don't need any more stuff. Like, I'm done with stuff. And I'm leaving this weekend to go camping for a few days, and I'm 100% positive that whenever I get back, I'm packing myself up and I'm leaving. And I don't have a RV right now or anything like that, but when I was thinking about it, I was like, I really am happier in nature with my kids in that experience. That fulfills me. And how much money do I really need to do that? I don't know. We're about to find out.
That's exciting. Any idea where you might land?
I have no idea. I know where I'm landing this weekend, but that's all. I really kind of was sidetracked by the idea, because I've been wanting to leave where I was for a while now. I'm actually in my mom's house because she passed away, and there's just so much stuff, and it interfered. The whole situation actually feels insulting to my soul. is what I like grounded myself in today, was that everything's just a distraction for me or my kids. It's always a mess to clean up, which is why I did tiny living, even in the time that I was living with 5 kids, was because in that amount of space, you take the distractions down to such a level that you're able to experience in a different way. And I really enjoyed it. With having 5 boys, people thought I was crazy in a little RV, but to me it was amazing. And my kids got along better than they did in a house, and there are so many benefits to it. And now I only have my twin 5-year-olds, and that, you know, is a lot easier to be able to move around more freely with. And yeah, I think I'm just going to hit the road and go wherever life so calls. I'm not set up for it at this moment, but I'm sure Spirit will match my decision. So we'll see what happens.
Bring out the gypsy soul. You know, that's a huge act of revolution and rebellion when you buck. And you can honestly say you love the existence. Some people might buck and try it and say, it's not for me, living in tiny houses and campers and stuff, and that's fine. That's why we try things, to see how we feel. You like it. You prefer it. It's wildly revolutionary to buck the status quo and go an alternative route. It's a brilliant plan, and I'll be interested to follow you vicariously on your trip there. Hopefully you'll post some pictures on Facebook, and then we'll catch up with you on Tuesdays, and you can tell us where you're at. Be like, on the road with Tasha. Be cool.
That sounds good.
And Sarah's done some tiny living too. Did you stay in the tiny living quarters for quite some time, or was it a short-lived experience?
Yeah, great question. My husband and I bought our tiny house after the birth of our first, and unfortunately, even though we were in Maryland at the time and we were moving to Tennessee to be closer to family because we just had a baby and realized it was really hard to do that alone, and D.C. was super expensive. So we get here and we thought for sure, you know, there'd be some rural counties around Davidson County where I could still work. And needless to say, tiny houses were still so new at that time. I was like showing pictures and explaining it to zoning people, and they were just like, I don't understand. It's a mobile home, you know, like it was very hard. So what we ended up doing was also buying a small house and putting the tiny house in the back, and we used it as kind of an advocacy tool where we were trying to gain exposure. So we would like have city council members over to like take a tour and show them like this is, because a lot of people at the time were like, you're basically wanting to stick people in dog houses, and it's like, that's not at all what it is. Have you seen one of them? Like let's take a tour. There's so much living room space here. And so we ended up selling it shortly after the birth of our second daughter. But and we have, thank goodness, we have the space that we have right now because like my husband works remotely, but he's on video calls like all the time. I do podcasting. I mean, you'll probably hear my kids and dogs in the background now because we're quarantining. But just today, I found myself on like Facebook Marketplace looking at RVs and campers to like rehab and, you know, refurbish because it's not something that like leaves you. I mean, can't tell you how many times like my mother-in-law, who treasures all of this like 7,000 years of like Jewish heritage and culture and furniture, that like she's begging people to come over and like dig through her closet. She still has her maternity clothes from 32 years ago, and she wants like, she's afraid to throw anything out because she thinks someone might want it. And I'm like, I love you, but if you die, we will throw it all out.
Yeah.
And
donate
she's like,
it or something,
no,
right?
You can't. Like, this is important. It has sentimental value. I'm like, for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is stuff, and you can tell me the stories about the stuff, and maybe we can record them or like put it on tape. But like, we don't want your stuff. Like, it gives me anxiety to have all that stuff around. And I think for me, I think it's something that's becoming more popular because you see the rise of like the Marie Kondo books. You see people, you know, doing challenges like I think there was like a 3-3-3 challenge where you basically pick 33 items of clothing. It doesn't include pajamas or like exercise gear, but you pick 33 pieces, and that's what you have to wear for 3 months, and that's it, you know, which is like you don't need more than that really. And it doesn't count like underwear and stuff either. But I think that's the direction people are going at because they've been told by their grandparents, by their parents, by, like that your job is to make enough money so that you can pay off all this debt from your house and your student loans and still be able to feed yourself and save for your retirement and go and have fun, right? You have to take those vacations. Everyone's like, take your vacation days. But then they realize, like, at the end of the paycheck, they've got nothing. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing left. So they're just kind of questioning this intelligent advice that they're receiving and deciding that that's not the only way. And I love it.
I love it too. I love that you're looking at rehabbing those because not only do I think that it's going to continue gaining popularity, I think it's going to be pushed into necessity. I hate to be too doom and gloom, but our economy is going to crash at some point. It's going to do some heavy-duty shifting. So out of desire and wanting to do it, that's fantastic. And then maybe even the necessity of having to do it to downsize to keep the overhead down. I think that you're brilliant for wanting to rehab these, and you're always several steps ahead, in my opinion, with business. So this was just one of those situations where you're thinking ahead, what will people need? Not only what will they need, but they might have to do this. And there's a lot of people out there like Tasha who just don't want stuff. And like you, Sarah, is telling your mother-in-law, hey, this stuff gives me anxiety. My boyfriend's parents are like that too. They're like, well, we got this whole basement full of stuff. We know that you had a fire a couple years ago, but why don't you, come get all the stuff that you need and want? And we're like, we've got a table, a couch, a desk, and a couple other odds and ends, dressers and stuff. And then we were like, we like the sparse look. And they're very confused because they're like, you don't want the hutches? We got the hutches for you. And we're like, no, we don't want the hutches. We don't want the hutches. We have built-in stuff in our kitchen. We like that. And they're like, you don't want the baby grand? We have the, what are you going to put in the living room? We're like, it doesn't fit. We got a 1,700 square foot house. They're like, 1,700 square foot? How are you? How are you going to have room for this and that and the buffet? And we're like, no. Well, it really took a lot of chiseling to get them to realize that we're minimalists, really, at the end of the day. And to speak on that tiny living, for 10 months in Northern California, it's a beautiful place. It's Calistoga. It's North Napa Valley. I lived off-grid and in a very nice but camper. And because I met my boyfriend a year after his home had burnt in Northern California fires. I think they were the camp fires. I can't remember the name. And he was kind of toying around with rebuilding or selling. He didn't know he has 14 acres in Napa Valley, and he was toying around with building and then going, and he met me, and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, I don't want to live in California. It's not my style. It's a little bit too pretentious, a little too high price. It reminds me a little too much of Colorado, although it's beautiful, and I'll be there temporarily. He goes, all right, how about you come here? We stick around, make some plans for about 10 months, and then we head to New Mexico because it was something we decided we both liked New Mexico and we wouldn't mind living here. So I was in a very temporary but yet off-the-grid living experience for a year. I carried every gallon of water we used and drank and washed everything with. We did have a generator in case the panels didn't pick up enough sunlight for our use, and it was an eye-opening experience. I mean, just the amount of water we use to clean our counters is an incredible amount of water when you start carrying it around. So I did get to experience that, but it was cool. I could do it again if I had running water. I would absolutely do it again if I had running water. In fact, some of the houses we looked at in New Mexico were off the grid, compostable toilet and everything. And then we just didn't pick one of those houses. But I didn't mind it too much. I liked the simple living. Hauling water was kind of a pain in the ass, but beyond that, it was fine. And I did work at a spa just down the road where we had tons. We had a whole slew of hot springs you could get into. So I had water at my access for work and staying clean and stuff like that regularly to work in the public. So that was a saving grace too, having the showers there as well as the water to soak in and something to do too, because we were just on a beautiful chunk of land in between two vineyards. So it was gorgeous. It was just, kind of dusty and you wanted to get out of the house a little bit, kind of like we're probably feeling now, but I dig it. I thought that was a great experience.
Yeah, and given enough time, if it was permanent, you could always install water collection systems. So